Okay. Okay, guys, welcome to the show. I'm so excited today to have my friend Tony Kovicak with me. He's going to give us a little bit of background here in a minute, but before we get there, I just want to say we were connected through a mutual friend. And in just meeting with him a couple times, I've learned so much about this concept of red light therapy, which is what we're going to be diving into today. Those of you guys listening know that I'm a really big fan of sort of biohacking, finding anything I can to improve my performance and my body in general. I'm a huge fan of, we just finished talking actually before this recording about clean coffee, nutritional supplements, all that kind of stuff. And so this concept of red light therapy is new to me. It's something that I'm learning about, and I'm going to learn alongside with you guys today. I'm going to ask some questions from a very basic level, all about this concept, and he is the perfect person to answer those questions. So Tony, I'm going to let you sort of introduce yourself. You are the CEO and founder of Lux Therapy, but I want to hear more about sort of how you got here. What is your backstory with this and what led you to entrepreneurship?
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Jenny, and thanks for your audience for joining. I've come into the world of red light therapy, kind of like what you were just describing. I've kind of been a biohacker throughout my life. Grew up in the eastern side of Michigan, the youngest of four, blue collar family. But as an athlete growing up, I was a wrestler. And through that process of in that journey, I really became aware of nutrition and how eating properly can help your performance. And through that journey, I've kind of become a lifelong biohacker and understanding being optimized. So through that journey, over the course of my life, I've come through a lot of different fields. I was involved in food and product development. At one point, I was going to be a chef just because I started really enjoying the process of how learning about things that can affect our body and help our health and wellness. And through that, I've kind of found myself throughout my life being involved in a lot of different things. And about 5 years ago, I came across red light therapy. And at that time, I was living out in San Francisco and working for a company that developed custom electronics for Google. And in that process, I was actually traveling to Asia, where we actually manufacture a lot of those products for them. And I came across red light therapy just on one of the podcasts. I think that we've probably listened to, Dave Asprey. They were discussing it. I thought, what is this stuff? So I started really digging into it. And at that point, I kind of started understanding, like, wow, there's something here. So I bought these devices for my family, and I just kind of watched and understood and just witnessed what was happening as they implemented these types of devices and this technology into their life. And the thing that really put me on the path was watching my 75-year-old mother incorporate it into her life and how it affected her, and how she really just wasn't really completely aware of what was happening, but knew that it was changing her life in a positive way. And as she really embraced it, I kind of understood that there was a path for bringing this to other people that don't really understand it. Like we're talking about before we jumped on the podcast, you become kind of an expert in the hormone world and really digging into the complexities of that. A lot of people don't really understand that, but when you actually just understand there's a pathway to understanding it, you gain traction and you gain energy around that area of your life, and you can take control of it. So through that, and with joining and a couple of partners over in Asia, where we actually manufacture our product, we created Lux Therapy. And we've been bringing these devices to the world for the last year and a half. And really, we've had a great journey with, meeting people like yourself and getting on and bringing this kind of information to the masses. So it's been a great journey, and I'm kind of just on the front end of it. It's really taking control of not my life, but it's helping a lot of people that we connect with. So it's been a great journey up until this point.
That's amazing. I love that. And I love when entrepreneurship is born out of a need. My grandfather was actually an entrepreneur as well. And I remember talking to him probably in the last year or two of his life in his 90s and asking him, like, what led you to starting a trucking company? That was his entrepreneurial endeavor. And he said, well, I saw a need. He said, I saw a need. And that sounds like my experience too, and your experience too. And I think that's ultimately what leads to successful entrepreneurship, is if you see that need and you can fill it and serve people, There's no holding you back. So I'm interested in hearing more about sort of your mother's journey and what you've kind of seen transform for her. But first, can you give us sort of just a dictionary level description for those who've maybe never heard of red light therapy before? Can you tell us what it is?
Yeah, great introduction there. And red light therapy is really, when you think about how our body evolved, we evolved to be within natural sunlight. Like up until the last 50 years, most of people's time was spent outdoors in either the morning, midday, or evening light, and then you would shut down and you would sleep and you recover. And you think about the biology of humans, or really anything that's alive, has evolved with light, and different organisms actually have different ways that they interact with those wavelengths. There's really 5 specific wavelengths of light that, and let's not even say light, let's say like radiation. When you think about the things that are affecting our body, you have UV, you have ultraviolet, you have blue light, you have red light, and you have near infrared. Those are the 5 bioactive wavelengths that really interact with our body. And what's over time, what has allowed us to really grow and our bodies to be healthy is having a nice balance of those wavelengths. So when you think about red light therapy and what's really happened over the last 25 years, is they've started to understand that when you look at these individual wavelengths, and it's really an intersection of the science of understanding what's happening as we are exposed to all of these wavelengths. When we have a nice balance of those, the body functions in its proper state. However, when we get too much blue light, which we are hearing about over the last 10 years, our Apple devices and our Android devices now have filters on them. We have blue blockers, and people are using a lot of different ways of controlling their environment. But really what that is your body's reaction to an over and under stimulation of specific wavelengths. So what we, over the last 30 years, has happened with humans is we've moved indoors. And through that process, we're completely exposed to tons of blue light, which blue light is great because it energizes the body. You want that. And they make certain devices that help stimulate that. That helps control your circadian rhythm. But what you're getting, because 90% of the time we are spent in artificial light, you have too much blue light, which actually screws up your circadian rhythm. So what you need to do is either get out into the natural sunlight and get the appropriate amount of all the appropriate wavelengths, or supplement with a thing like a red light therapy device that has both red and near infrared wavelengths that really interact with our body. So what they found over the course of the last 25 years, and this really started with NASA back in the 90s. NASA was trying to understand and develop ways that they could create a more healthy environment for the astronauts. And when they started studying all these various wavelengths, they realized that the body healed really well with red light. And then they started digging into a few of the other wavelengths, and they realized red light and near infrared light actually interacts with our bodies in a very beneficial way. So when you think about the human body, every cell in our body has a thing called the mitochondria. The mitochondria is really what drives many of the biological processes within our system. And by stimulating that with a thing called cytochrome C oxidase, which actually has a photoreceptor on it that accepts red and near infrared wavelengths, you trigger activity within that cell. So whatever that cell is meant to do, it does better. And by triggering that cytochrome C oxidase, it creates ATP, which is cellular energy, which then creates more biological action, whatever's going on. So, anecdotally, like in Michigan, where I live, I mountain bike a lot during the summer. And during that time, I inevitably get poison ivy because you're just riding a bike through the woods. And with this process of using red light therapy, you can go through the process of getting poison ivy and getting your body to heal like super quick. Within 3 to 5 days, you can basically stop the process. And anecdotal situations like that are really great. And that's the thing. Like with this, like I mentioned, every cell in your body has this mitochondria. So you're going to see positive impacts in a lot of different cascading ways. So I always explain it to people like, hey, anecdotally, you're going to see this in a variety of ways. If your system is deficient in one area, if you apply red or near infrared light to it, typically you'll gain a, a, a function that actually helps with the homeostasis of your system, wherever you're deficient. So that's kind of the basis of what is going on with red light and infrared light, that is.
That is an amazing description. I love that. And it's funny because I've actually listened to about 3 different podcasts this year alone. And it's only like, what is this, like the first week of the year? And when we're recording this, and I keep hearing the same things. I've listened to several experts in sort of the biohacking field talk about how, when they're asked about what do you do first thing in the morning, what is your morning routine? I've heard 3 different individuals say that the very first thing that they do is they go outside regardless of the temperature, and they just stare up at the sunlight for like up to 10 minutes to really set their circadian rhythm. And I heard that, they always say you have to hear something so many times before you implement it yourself. And so I started doing this year when I made my list of health goals. It sounds so silly to say, and I'm sure that, when I mentioned it to some family members, they looked at me like, okay, like sounds like a good plan, crazy person. But it's funny because women in particular, and that's who I'm speaking to here specifically, is I hear so often that I just feel off. I can't sleep at night. I feel like my rhythm is all off. Well, what they're speaking about most likely is their circadian rhythm, because they might be dealing with perimenopausal symptoms or whatever the case might be for them. They're not sleeping well, and that's kind of screwing up their entire 24-hour, cadence. And so I'd love to hear from you. What is it that makes red light therapy different from sunlight? Can you kind of compare the benefits of that for us?
Sure. Yeah, that's great. A great intro. And, that's one of the things too, and we can jump into that at a later time in the conversation, but the sleep is one of the first things I noticed when I started using it. A lot of people that incorporate it, you realize there's such a deficiency of basically the melatonin that is released through the pineal gland, because the red light basically stimulates that it's the end of the day and your body creates more melatonin. So once you start getting more of that in your system, you see immediate sleep and recovery. You start sleeping so much better. So that's kind of one of the main things there. I'm sorry, what was your question again, Jen?
That's okay. Just comparing like red light therapy to the sun. Like what are the differences?
It's very interesting. Like when I started really getting into this, like I started buying all the equipment to measure lights and measure the sunlight. And when you actually look at the sun, how we were raised in understanding the science behind light, Roy G. Biv, if you remember from childhood, red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, violet. But when you take full spectrum sun, when you're getting that midday, your body can really only handle a specific quantity of that because of the amount of the UV that is in that. So it feels great, but you're not getting enough of the red and the near infrared or any of those other wavelengths, because it is a completely, it's a full spectrum. So when they say in the morning, for example, it's like get out and get into the sun, like you had mentioned, what you're really getting, because of the way the sun is coming through the atmosphere, it's filtering out a lot of that UV. So you can actually be in the sunlight in the morning and night longer. So if you can get out into natural sunlight, morning and evening is really how you want to do that. So all of the wavelengths are present in full spectrum, but you can't get enough of a therapeutic dose, which is the key. Like, so our device is designed around 2 specific groups of wavelengths, red and near infrared. And within each of those wavelengths, we have picked two wavelengths. So in red, we have 630 and 660. And in infrared, we have 830 and 850. Those are the 2 most beneficial bands, but then we divided those across 2 very specific wavelengths, which help interact with the body. And they found that there's very specific biological effects from each of those. So you can, with our device, for example, just get red, which, for example, you were mentioning in the morning, looking into the sun. There was actually a great study that had just come out that basically they went and they analyzed people utilizing red and near infrared light in the morning, and it helps with macular degeneration. So it actually helped people improve their eyesight. And what they found is that by using just red between 7 and 10 a.m. in the morning, somewhere in that range, and not infrared, they had a higher propensity for healthier eyesight. So it's like a very interesting
Wow.
thing that even though you would think that you could eat both of these wavelengths, there's actually a higher efficacy of using just red, which correlates to what you were just talking about. You go out in the morning, and a lot of people, biohackers, go out and look into the sun very first thing in the morning. It's hard to describe until you see a study like that, but it just feels right.
Mhm.
And like this is kind of the thing that a lot of times we don't really know the vernacular to understand or describe what is happening, but we know something inherently is right when we do things like that. And I love seeing the science that comes out and hearing people like you talk about. And because we're in the health and wellness and the biohacking field, you talk to people a lot that have and experience this, and it just makes sense, and it supports a lot of the work that you are doing and things that we as Lux Therapy are doing as well.
Right. Yeah, I think, and I say this with a lot of my guests and whatnot, but I think it's really common for us to, as a society, to really think of, unfortunately, I should say, to think of health from a reactive state. So in other words, a lot of times, especially in our country, I think people wait until a certain point or whenever something arises, whether it be cancer or, a thyroid condition, whatever the case is, and then they start to sort of retroactively treat themselves, which there's no problem with that necessarily. But I also think that modern medicine is, I can't think of the last time that, it's been probably 10 years since I met with like a traditional doctor. I work with functional medicine doctors now.
Sure.
But I know that when I was dealing with my migraine journey and sort of my issues, my chronic issues years ago, I met with neurologist upon spinal specialist. I met with everybody. And it seems like never once in that probably 4-year journey did I ever get asked about my sleep quality, my nutrition, my exercise, my vitamin D levels, or my vitamin levels. And it's just a difference in thought. And so it's a difference in treating your body retroactively versus proactively. And I love this conversation about the circadian rhythm. This is something that I've been paying attention to since I think it was also Dave Asprey years ago mentioning on his podcast that the best way to, because I've always been somebody who I'm terrible with jet lag. So if I fly, even if I just fly to California, I'm in the Midwest, and if I fly to California, it takes me like 2 days to feel like myself. And his recommendation, I'll never forget this, was when you're flying to a different time zone, you should immediately find green space, grass somewhere, and lie down and look up at the sun for, I think he said it was like 30 minutes. Like if you can lie in the grass and look up at the sun for 30 minutes. And I remember when my husband and I traveled to Italy, I was so miserable from the jet lag that I was like, we just need to find a park. I just need to lay down. He thought that I was totally crazy, but it's so true. And until you start to experience it, until you really start to treat your health proactively and really dig into this stuff, I love what you're saying about a lot of times it can't be explained as well as it can be experienced. So having somebody say like, gosh, I've been doing this and I feel so much different. That's where the power lies,
Yeah. And I find, you mentioned it a little bit regarding the medical field, and we meet with a lot of doctors and podiatrists and different groups that they're kind of on the front end of understanding this stuff, but they don't really know because it's such a niche. It's really a niche area of medicine that, and frankly, there's no money in the cure for a lot of these places. And it's kind of a thing that I realize even, we talked about my mother a little bit, and I'll dig more into that and on her journey, but seeing how people are medically treated versus, optimizing a system and optimizing their ability to have better health and wellness, which cascades into various different areas of their life to help them be more optimized. Like a lot of the doctors, when I go in, I'll take the research directly into them because they're not aware of it. But when they start looking through and they understand that there's thousands of peer-reviewed research papers on red and near infrared light therapy that can help with, a lot of podiatrists, they do surgeries that they'll use our devices in order to prep and improve the circulation prior to the surgery, whether they're doing ankle, knees, and it helps stimulate the areas so that it has a higher efficacy of success rate. And then they use it after because it helps with wound healing. So doctors love it because, the research is so new, and because it is complicated, but because there's so much out there, a lot of the research is done in other countries besides the United States, which is somewhat frustrating, but it's very exciting for me to meet with those folks and help educate them and help them see that there's a pathway that is new, and they can get better results from, combining something new with the things that they've done forever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great thing. It's kind of cool seeing how people incorporate it in their practices and their businesses.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm curious. It sounds to me like red light therapy is really just all benefits. Are there any side effects associated with it, or any issues that people can have with it? Or is it mostly just, this is here for your benefit?
Yeah. It's mostly benefit, but what you find is because there's such a deficiency with people's systems, sometimes when people incorporate it initially, they have some version of toxicity that kind of gets flushed through their system. So you'll find people sometimes that will start doing it and they'll feel pain from an area, because it's really like you're stimulating an area with new energy that they haven't seen before. But really what it's doing is moving the nitric oxide out of those cells and helping to create circulation within. You also can experience in a very, very small percentage of the population photosensitivity, but usually you can work through that. Like what we typically do when you start doing these types of practices is do 3 to 5 minutes on a kind of a discrete area of your body. Like we usually recommend your forearm, the inside of your arm, and just do 3 to 5 minutes. And if you have no redness or irritation or whatnot, that's really the sign that you're not photosensitive. And some people actually, if they go into the sun, depending on complexion, their body reacts very differently. So we always recommend to start slow, and the body will typically start reacting with the light in a way that may be new to them, but over the course of 5 to 7 treatments, the course of a couple of weeks, they'll get through that, and then their body will adapt to it and they'll be fine. So the other thing that can happen too is a thing called biphasic response, which basically means you go through the curve of optimal dosage. So there's a dosage calculator that goes with the device depending on what you're trying to treat. And if you go too far past it, there's no real negatives, but you lose all the positives. So once you get into this bell curve, you find this little zone that's appropriate. So for like skin, for example, we recommend between 7 and 10 minutes every other day. Deeper things like ligaments and tissue, bone remodeling, those things can take a little bit more time and also more treatments. But again, you can sit in front of the light. I usually do every other day, at least 20 to 30 minutes. And then the way we've designed our light, like I use it a lot of times for working out. I'll have it set up. So between doing something, I'll go stand in front of it for a couple of minutes and move the light around. So it's very convenient to kind of have one. I have one in my office right now that I turn on when I have a podcast like this. I can have it going and, work on my, ankle that I had rolled a couple of years ago. So not any real major negatives though, which is exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I find that it's funny because it reminds me when you're talking about that of, I work with a company with nutritional shakes, right? And so I try to help people understand that a lot of times if they're seeing some sort of distress when they first start a nutritional shake, that they could just simply be detoxifying their system. First of all, it's not intended to be a Wendy's Frosty or an ice cream type of shake, right? It's not necessarily, it's supposed to be fueling your body and filling any deficiencies that you have. Yeah. And what I find is people will say, oh, it made me go to the bathroom, or I started to feel a little bit funny. Well, it's doing that because it's detoxifying your system, and it takes about a week or so to get used to. So it sounds like very similar, if your body is sort of overloaded, it has to get through that load before it can make progress. Right. So
yeah, okay, it is. Cool. It's fascinating to watch different people that have different levels of health and wellness who incorporate it. A lot of biohackers and people that are like down their journey, they incorporate it, and they're just, they see like muscle recovery and performance quick. Whereas some people, it's like they're sleep deprived, or They have skin issues, things that are topically, top of mind for them
Right.
that they can affect. So it's anecdotally, it's like, and because of the way that it works, like we had mentioned at the beginning, there's so many different various like cascading effects within our systems. And within the hormone world, like as one thing gets optimized, it leads to another optimized system within the body, which is great. I
Yeah.
love that you can use it for skin, you can use it for testosterone production, and you can use it for a lot of different things. So
Yeah.
I love being able to see and watch it with our customers and our clients, which is great. So,
and that's what I want to dive into next, really, is like, let's talk more specifically about hormone health and, women in particular, since that's who is most likely going to be listening to this. We had a brief conversation before this podcast about this, and we talked about, first of all, the sheer number of women who are dealing with some sort of hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, Hashimoto's, autoimmune disease, you name it, right? There are so many different sort of endocrine conditions out there. What could red light therapy do for those women in particular?
Yeah, it's in preparation for this, and also on a couple other podcasts, I've kind of dug into the high level stuff, and Hashimoto's is very interesting, and how it actually helps with stimulating and kind of providing homeostasis for the thyroid. Really, what you have is, because of the various levels within hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, and things of that nature, you have hypo and hyper, where it can, a lot of times people's systems can be up or down. And the beauty of red light therapy is that because it actually increases the health of the system that it is interacting with, it will do both. It doesn't just increase everything. So if you have hyper, it's not going to make it worse. It actually helps it to regulate down, which is great. So what you find is that with thyroid, it basically helps increase the things that are positive. There's a couple of them that, the TPOAB levels, for example, they did a study on this, and 50% of the people that did this had a major decrease in those levels, but it also helped with the EI, and it increased those levels as well. So it's like, even though it again helps increase things, it can help decrease them as well. So people that actually have gone through these studies, they tested them, and even after 9 months, they were actually had really regulated systems just by getting like 10 doses of this over the course of a couple of weeks. So people that have suffered with this and have been on medications, it's a great system for helping to regulate that. And the thyroid is that gland that's right behind your throat. So a lot of times what they'll do is they'll shine the light on various spots, both sides, and it helps increase those systems. So that's one of the major ones that it really helps with. I don't know, in your world of hormones and regulation and whatnot, you have a lot of clients that have hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's.
Yeah, I would say that it's pretty common. It's, I would say the most common things that I see are Hashimoto's, autoimmune, or like PCOS, sex hormone conditions. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I teach in the course is we talk about this concept of what I call the four-legged chair, being your endocrine system. So your thyroid, your cortisol and stress response, your sugar, and your sex hormones. And how, I give the example that if one of those legs of the chair gets sort of sawed off, right? If you have a weakness in one area, what's going to happen to the whole chair? The whole chair is going to crumble. And then also, we talk about the chair itself. What kind of ground is it sitting on? Which is your gut. Is it sitting on a nice, firm hardwood floor,
Sure.
right? Or concrete floor, or is it sitting on sand?
Right.
And of course, that foundation is your gut health. And so, when we look at these things, one of the things that comes up often, regardless of condition, regardless of where that imbalance lies, is liver function. Are you, excreting the toxins in your body? I remember my doctor specifically telling me, my functional medicine doctor told me this years ago, because I was really struggling to understand because for me, everything has manifested as migraine. Did I have other symptoms? Yes. But of course they were I didn't really see them because I was struggling with the headache. And so when I talked to her about it, for me specifically, my trigger is estrogen dominance. So my body seems to be, that ratio of estrogen to progesterone is off. I have higher estrogen in relation to my progesterone. So when that happens at different phases of my cycle, whether it's right before my period starts or if it's right at ovulation when estrogen surges, I get really bad, intense migraines. Now, granted, I've been able to supplement and I use bioidentical progesterone now, and those headaches have really resolved for the most part. But I started to understand my triggers and I wanted to dig deeper and understand from her, aren't I supposed to, I thought I was supposed to produce estrogen. You know what I mean? Like why is my body producing more? And she really had to describe to me that, because of environmental estrogens and things that I could be consuming or just things that I'm around, whether it's the shampoo products that I use or the makeup that I use and all the things that are in my house, the cleaning supplies, all that kind of stuff can become these sort of toxic estrogens in the body. And she said to me, for you specifically, estrogen is toxic. You're something with the methylation of my liver and the way that my liver processes estrogen, it just isn't up to speed. And so that's why I have to take specific supplements to really sort of expedite that process and help my body excrete those toxins. And so I'm specifically interested in red light therapy because I want to see how it might improve that liver function for myself. So I don't know if you want to touch on any of that or if that's something that's in your wheelhouse or not, but I think that how our body, excretes toxins is so key to kind of getting to the root cause of what's going on for people, regardless of what leg of the chair is weak.
Yeah, it's fascinating when you start understanding the various systems that are affected by this. Excuse me. Because one of the things that we talked about a little bit was melatonin. Melatonin, it's one of those from the pineal gland that basically is stimulated when the body is exposed to red light. It's basically saying it's evening, sun's going down, get ready to sleep, produce more of this. But what we might have heard during the pandemic was they started really understanding people's deficiencies and what was it? It was vitamin D was a big one, but also people that had melatonin deficiencies also had higher mortality rates with COVID. And they started digging into that, and they started really digging and understanding that melatonin is actually a cytoprotectant as well. It basically helps the body manage toxins and manage through, and it helps the mitochondria be protected against various toxins, whether it's stress or things like environmental toxins that we're exposed to, and like you had mentioned, shampoos and things of that nature. It's like all of our body is being exposed to that on various levels that we don't understand. So when your system is optimized, it can deal with those in a better way. And you mentioned liver, and red light therapy actually has been shown to help with kind of the sorting of nutrients and toxins. It optimizes the liver so that it can be more efficient with managing that stuff, which is, I didn't really know. I mean, I knew it helped with sleep, but really when we dug into it and understand how it helps with the electron transport chain, it moves the nutrients through the various stages of that, and it helps it be more optimized. So they found that through the pandemic, they were really researching melatonin, and a lot of that research from different studies kind of came into play, and they said, well, yeah, melatonin. So when you increase things like melatonin production in your body, you can fight off various toxins better, which is amazing. I find that to be kind of one of the added benefits of using a device like this, or even anything, or being out in natural sunlight. So good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember for me, when I was dealing with my migraines and stuff like that, which also happened, I didn't realize it at the time, but it happened to be connected, of course, to the migraines were connected to my sleep, of course, it's all interconnected. And coming to that realization that, I think at some point I had a physical therapist or someone that I was working with that mentioned to me, you have to think of sleep as sort of like the reboot of your computer system, right? Like you need those deep levels of REM, those deep levels of sleep during the night so that your body and your brain can reset. And so when I was dealing with this sort of chronic state of pain, and also only sleeping in sort of that light layer of sleep because of the pain, I was never really letting my brain sort of rewash and re-cleanse and reboot. I actually have a blog post on this topic about sleep being the ultimate reboot. I actually, for Christmas this year, I got the Aura ring. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Aura ring, but my husband and I got them for each other. And it's been really enlightening to see the nights that I feel like, oh, I was in bed for 8 hours. I slept good. And then I look at my data and I'm like, ooh, I really only had 45 minutes of REM sleep, or I'm mistiming my tiredness, right? That's the thing I keep getting informed is that I'm staying up too late, which I know I'm a glorified night owl. So, but just improving sleep at the end of the day, like, is number one, and I teach the 4 fundamentals of hormone balance in my course as being sleep, number one, supplementation, nutrition, and fitness. Fitness comes last. And it's funny because most women come to the game ready to work out. Like they're ready to move, they're ready to lose the weight, they're ready to feel better. And I love that you're willing to move, but if we're not addressing your sleep, or if you're putting your adrenals in a state of crisis, because of your lack of sleep, the exercise isn't going to do anything except maybe even reverse your progress. So it's, I love that you're giving us so much information about how it can really help that sleep system and help your melatonin production, because that really is number one. Like we really do need to look at sleep first. So, okay. So let's talk a little bit. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and add to that it's because there's so many systems that this affects. And because when you like, as you know, in this describing the systems that you just described, all of them kind of play into each other. And you have these little micro systems that if they're off, you can kind of adjust to that. And you can, with exercise or extra coffee or whatever you want to do, you can combat these things, but it doesn't mean that it's really helping you be balanced and in a state of wellness. So I kind of find that the things as I dig more into the research behind this, it's really fascinating. And I love having these conversations where we go deep. So bring it on. It's good.
Absolutely. I know. I love vibing with people who are fellow biohackers. So, okay. So is there anything that you wanted to touch on as far as, because I know that what will bring people to the podcast and what will bring people to this journey of understanding hormone health usually starts with weight loss. Usually a woman says, I'm sick of feeling this way. I don't have enough energy. I don't like the way I look or feel. I need to lose some weight. And that's usually what brings people into this journey of discovering how to get healthier. And so what would you say to that woman who's looking for, to lose some cellulite, to lose some fat, to lose some weight around the belly or the thighs? Like what could red light therapy do for her?
Yeah, they've done a lot of research and a lot of studies on this. Actually, I have a physical therapist here in town that has started using the devices, and they've got great results. And look at body slimming. So what they found is that through utilizing red light, that it actually changes the molecular system and how the body manages the lipids that pass through the fatty acids. So when you apply the light to cellulite, for example, and then you work out, it allows the body to flush those out of the system. So when you combine red light therapy with an improvement in diet and exercise, and there's a specific way that you manage those combination of elements, you get a great result. And if you just do body slimming red light therapy, you'll see hundreds and hundreds of studies. People in clinics are doing this all over the place, but it's the same thing. It's basically utilizing the light, stimulates those cells. It changes the molecular structure of the fatty acids, like we had mentioned, and it creates a slimming effect within weeks. Like people will see major results if they just apply this with, and again, you can't do it and not have added things like diet and nutrition and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, when you apply this, people see significant results, which is amazing. It took 4 weeks and people noticed significant changes already. So it's an amazing thing that can be applied to almost anybody who's looking for improvements in that area.
Awesome. Well, I, for one, am excited to start using Lux therapy. I'm excited to start using a red light. I'm going to incorporate it into my morning. Today, we were just talking about the fact that it is 3 degrees where I am right now. And so as much as I would like to go stand outside and look at the sun for 10 minutes this morning, I did make it to my front window, which I'm sure is nowhere near the same, but I was like, no way. So the red light's going to come in, especially helpful in the winter season. But I want you to tell people, what's on the horizon for Lux Therapy. Like, what is what is the outlook for this year for you? And also tell us where we can find you and where people can invest in a red light.
Yeah. You can follow us at luxtherapy.com. We're on both socials, Red Light Therapy, Lux Therapy Red Lights on both Facebook and Instagram. And again, luxtherapy.com. You can reach out to us if you have questions specific to any of the topics that we covered today. We have all of our studies listed on our Learn page. So lots of great information there. This year is going to be great for Lux Therapy. We've brought on a lot of affiliates, and we have a lot of medical practitioners that are bringing our devices into play. So we're starting to get traction all over the United States, and we're doing great work with explaining and having conversations like this. Really bringing it to the general population, the general public is really our goal for 2022, and really just giving people the knowledge to, whether it is through buying one of our devices or just through the process of getting out into natural sunlight. We really want people to just, we didn't really touch on it with the pandemic, but, I really wish that we had the opportunity to increase our wellness. And I think you're doing that with your group and the people that follow you, and we're doing that as well. And I think we have the opportunity of increasing the wellness of our population, whether that's the people that we're directly connected with or just the general population through conversations like this. So appreciate you and your audience and bringing this to the table.
Well, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate your endeavor with Lux Therapy. I think you guys are headed to great places. I'm so glad we've connected. For those of you who are interested, all of the links will be up in our show notes. So it is luxtherapy.com. That is LUX therapy. There's no E. So I'll have all that linked up in the show notes. But Tony, thank you so much for being on here and for sharing your wisdom. I'm hoping that if I can start using this red light, maybe we can even have a follow-up episode where we can dig into more questions in the near future. So thank you so much.
Can't wait for it. So I appreciate it again. Thanks, Jenny.
Perfect. All right, you guys, until next time.